Welcome to Critical Café,
Join us as we chat about the latest episode,
the campaign as a whole, and Critical Role in general.
all while we partake in a delicious cup of coffee. So grab yourself a tasty beverage
Settle into your favorite cozy spot.
and get ready for a little geek philosophy. Welcome to Critical Café, brought to you by Geek Philosophy, where we love geeky wisdom. I will get all the intros right at some point. I always have some variation almost every time we go live, I think. Mainly because my brain's a little fried this week. But my name's Brian, just in case I forget. It's on the screen, so I remember. And this, as always, is Crystal. I will remember her.
Yes.
That's the easy part. So thanks for joining us. And 2 nights in a row for us this week, because we were going to do a double episode last night to get caught up after, craziness that we've had the last few weeks. But, midstream, I was like, you know what? We probably need to do this in 2 parts, just so we can take a breath and then kind of revisit. And I'm glad that we did. Also gave us a chance to kind of go revisit the episode again and remind ourselves, since it had been a while. And we can kind of take it from there. If you're joining us first time in the show, we talk about Critical Role Campaign 3 right now, but all things Critical Role usually. If you are joining us in the chat, make sure you jump in, ask your questions, put your own thoughts in there. When we switch over to talking about the chat stuff, or when we take a break from reviewing Danny Carr's Critical Recap, we will have a chance to kind of breathe and talk about what we just went through from the recap perspective. And that's a good chance to jump into the chat if you have questions or comments. If you're catching this after the fact, after the recording, no worries. You can still leave video comments and we will answer or reply to them as soon as we can. But keep the conversation going. As far as supporting the channel, the best way you can do that is by subscribing and turning on the notifications so you don't miss out on anything. And yeah, let's I think that's most of it. Anything I'm missing?
Yeah. No, but we have a great episode to go over.
We do. We have a really good episode to
It's
go
really
over.
good.
I was really happy that things kind of went this direction after the break in pace that we've had in the last episode. So yeah, let's jump into the recap, shall we? So again, Danny Carr's Critical Recap. Second to say accept all those cookies, and then
Give me all the cookies.
Because who doesn't like cookies, right?
Oh, now I want cookies.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, we have to wait until we finish the broadcast, unfortunately. All right. Chaotic Return. So in this section of the video, or of their stream, they were really heading to Bosphorus, so they were making the trip that way.
Making their way.
And Keyleth disguised as Timothy, which is funny.
Timothy Chalamet.
Yeah. Also, Dancer was with them as well. And they all head to Bosphorus. And then there are 3 skyships from Vasselheim that are docked there while they show up, and they're kind of looking at the area. And they see as one of the skyships is hit with this explosion. And even though there's no combat going on in the air, so a few civilians in the morning seem like, that's just the way things go. So there's definitely a different feel to the area right now. And they're setting up carts in order to make money for the various new soldiers that are kind of coming through. So lots of, wartime effort going on, lots of people adapting with what they're doing. Keyleth wants to speak to some people and says that she might know someone from Vasselheim. So she's going to meet back with everybody at noon by the tree that they came through. They did the whole tree walking thing, basically, to get there. And Bell's Hells head to Imahara Joe's. That's where they're kind of going, because they're investigating what they can do with this whole device that they had from Ludinus.
Mm-hmm.
Chetney unlocks it because there's no answer at the door. So he picks it and gets it open. And then Laudna says, hey, Joe, we're calling out for Joe. They hear unfamiliar voices swear and some noises. Imogen opens up her mind and finds that there are 9 people inside of this workshop. But then this little glass ball is tossed out and a bomb of lightning basically goes off. And they look for another way in. So Laudna and Imogen are going to the roof, Imogen can see through the skylight that's there, sort of like a grated skylight. And there are 7 armed individuals with Maharajo, and then this other Lagamore, I guess, or some type of rabbit folk
Rabbit
there.
folk, yeah.
Yeah, that are guarded in the back. And the Bell's Hells kind of try to sneak in, but Laudna is spotted and then attacked on the roof, and the fight begins. So they realize that these are Paragon's Call mercenaries that are led by General Ratanish, and Odahan Thul's second in command, basically. So let's chat about this so far. So it was like really, they're stepping into something right off the bat.
Yeah. Super good start to the episode. Because, it's been kind of here or there the last couple of episodes. They've been kind of, like I said, they have like their episodes that are kind of lighthearted and fun, or shopping episodes. And then they'll have like a big one that a lot of stuff happens in. And I feel like this is one of those ones. But it's so good. They get there and they're trying to be funny about it. They're like, "Oh, Imahara," like at the front door, not realizing that he's actually being held captive inside with a friend. So they kind of stepped into it. At that point, they can't be, surprising anyone, because they really did not stealth their way through this whole process. So
Yeah. I mean, you're right. It was almost like they had no expectation of this coming in, the way they were like treating the whole thing.
They're just like, knock, knock, knock. Oh, wait, he didn't answer. So we're going to pick it. And then we're going to like do some spooky ghost shit or whatever, like, ooh.
Yeah. I mean, I feel as if it's like one of those things where, they never expect it to go the way that it goes. Like,
No.
very rarely do they get that right, which I think is kind of fun. So,
and then it's these bastards again.
Yeah.
General Ratanish and his bunch. And he's a bad mamma jamma. So I was like, oh no. Whenever they saw him, I was like, oh no, this is not going to be good. Because he almost killed Ashton the last time they fought. So he's, fairly formidable.
True. It was, he was, and this is also, again, this is DM and me coming out, but like, do you level up your villains as the group levels up? Sometimes it's a good thing from a game master's perspective, right? Because he wiped the floor with Ashton the first time, but that was many levels ago for Ashton.
Yeah.
And Ashton is, no slouch now. Like, he's gotten a lot more powerful. So it makes you wonder, did experience and stuff also grow for, the bad guys as they're...
I would think that probably so. I mean, I would imagine that it would. Although he was probably already much higher when they fought the first time. So maybe it slowed down, like you have to have more XP to get to a higher level.
Yeah, and I mean, the way Matt runs the games, it's very narrative based. So like, you want to feel like you're catching up as you're progressing. You want to feel like you're not.
Well, like you can go back and take them on. So. You don't want to feel like they're getting better while you're getting better. You want to be able to go back and take out that bad guy, not be like, oh no, now he's a lich, or he's like level 20. So
yeah, exactly. And hey Zach, welcome in, and thanks for the call out on my audio. If the audio is a little bit low, audio, just checking it. Audio for me, audio for both of us, audio for Crystal. It's probably me, but yeah, thanks for calling that out before we get too far into it. Especially someone as technically proficient as you, Zach. So it's good to know that I've got someone watching my back here. Let me just check.
Because we can't tell usually.
Yeah, a lot of times it's
it could be that I'm high, because remember we were messing with my mic. I didn't turn it back down, so
could be. So if let's see. So just for me, okay.
Okay, I sound good.
Crystal sounds fine. All right, so let me see if I can get mine turned up. Make sure that there's no cable issue. I'm on the right mic. Input volume. We're getting there, everybody. Okay, so that's probably as high as I can push it. I'm probably going to have to speak up and then, go from there. But keep me honest, Zach, if it starts to get wonky or if it's still really bad, I can figure it out. So we'll see if that's better. I'm going to get a little closer to the mic and move my keyboard out of the way and bring it even closer. All right, so so
you did get louder, so
it's better.
I can tell.
Okay, all right, so we'll keep it a little close. It must have been a setting. Side note for everybody, I don't know if this is going to be interesting or not, but we've had a couple live streams this time. I've also been recording standalone videos. I had an interview that I recorded. Let me look at the new comments. Kind of about toughness of NPCs, and Matt suggested it would be harder campaigning, and he ain't lying. That is so true. Let me bring this in. Yeah, so you are right. Like, I feel as if, what they've got going on as far as the NPCs and how things are sort of leveling up. He's definitely, made it a challenge for everybody as time's going on. And also, I feel like there's a good variety in NPCs too.
Yeah.
Crystal, don't let me forget that when we get to a little bit later, I have a new theory about something. So
okay. When we get to something, a little later, you have a theory about something.
When we get to any theories about or start talking about what's going on with Ludinus, I'm waiting for you to, when we get to talking about what Ludinus might be doing with the device, and when they start investigating the device, because we're not there yet, remind me, because I want to make sure that we cover that. So I'll try to remember to. All right, here we go. Back to the recap. Hopefully everybody can hear me better. What I was saying though is that I've had to switch setup so many times that it's probably something on my end, I'm sure. Okay, so they had the chaotic return. Now we're in the Paragon. So Laudna, who was injured from a sneak attack, throws a fireball down into the workshop, and Chetney is pretty badly. What was that? I'm sorry. Was that the fireball?
It was just yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. He's pretty badly injured before he can transform into the werewolf. So Dancer heals him via pussy too. FCG casts Banishment on Ratanish. By the way, every time I say the word Ratanish, it makes me think of rattan furniture that's not quite rattan furniture. It's just rattan-ish. Successfully removing him from the battle for 1 minute.
I think we've cracked.
Yeah,
I think there's been so much. We're just done.
Right. We're just gonna go with it. That's the way it is. We're completely professional. This is how it rolls. There's two professional internet broadcasters. All right, here we go. So Aurum detonates a broken crawler outside, killing a mercenary. I thought that was really cool. Mister also takes down a mercenary versus the flame seed to the throat. However, there is a druid mercenary, which I always think is great whenever there's an NPC bad guy druid, because then it turns the tables a little bit on everybody, because nobody suspects that. And I think nobody did. Well, I definitely Laudna didn't, or Marisha didn't, because she thought it was maybe not a druid when she tried to counterspell. It didn't work. Okay, so then changed into the eagle. Eagle goes out of the workshop, flies away. Ashton uses the really cool, I have to hand it to him, the whole wormhole strike thing with the portal sending the hammer through to hit the eagle, causes enough damage to make the druid drop to the regular form, and then sends the druid, Joe, and is it Yagamore or Lagamore? I can't tell if
Lagamore.
Yeah, and the Lagamore plummeting through the sky towards a sharp fence, which is it's pretty awesome the way that they all try to handle this. Ashton hops through the portal, appears in front of Joe, grapples him. Orem heads into the air, tries to catch the Lagamore, but then tries to do the bait and switch so that he's taken the brunt of the fall. Imogen uses telekinesis to bend the fence away from everybody so it's not pointing straight up. Really, really good use of all their actions. On the fly, Ashton and Orem break free of the fall. They're basically just like saying, hey, we'll take the damage for you. And then they save everybody from pretty much being dead. And Druid is knocked unconscious. Only a few seconds left on the banishment of Ratanish. Bell's Hells surround him, where he's basically going to come back. And then they're all waiting their actions. And when he comes back, all of the actions trigger. So it's just one after another after another. What I thought was really nice is Orem sets up Ashton for the final blow. And then with the final message from the Titan of Blood, Ratanish should have killed Ashton back at the Drusar bar. He kills Ratanish, pulling the hammer up through the general's body. All right, lots happening there. So
yes, it was a really cool battle. I mean, we had all kinds of different NPCs. We had a druid. We had Ratanish is a barbarian, I think. Like we had a rogue. We had a monk. And it's just, I don't know if I've really seen a whole lot of instances where we fight a druid, a monk. Like it was cool to see them on the opposite end. How the group got really tense when they realized what some of the classes were. They're like, oh shit, dope monk stuff, like we got to be careful. This is going to be crazy. And then Laudna tried to dispel the polymorph that wasn't a polymorph, that was a wild shape. I called that, but that's just me.
Yeah.
So had some really cool exchanges back and forth, and then not give props to Mr. actually landed several good flame seeds, one that landed in someone's mouth and killed them. Poo strike, flaming poo strike. And then they blew Ratanish away pretty much when he came back.
It's pretty good. I will say, like I mentioned it when I was going through the recap, but I feel like of the powers that Ashton sort of gave to either himself or the hammer, depending on how that stuff worked, I love the idea of like the wormhole strike of it, really. And because it's not considered a ranged attack, it's like a hole in space and time opening up and you're swinging through it and hitting it from somewhere else. And that's such a cool effect because then you can use your strength-based melee attack at a distance of 60 feet. So it's like you've now made a ranged barbarian that works well.
Well, and this, I'm going to tell you, I really felt like this was Ashton's show.
That's what
there
Zach
was so much. There was so much that fed into his backstory. So much was revealed. He got, he had skin in the game as with this whole group, especially with that fight at the ball with Ratanish when he had dressed up like the Nightmare King and Ratanish beat him to a bloody pulp. I feel like we unlocked a lot more of Ashton than we have in the past, which was really cool.
And we get to even more later in the episode, like finding out, again, more about why he is a little bit of what he is and the groups that he had before he met them. Yeah, really interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yep. All right, well, let's keep it going. We'll get there as we go through this. All right, Paragon, Tinker Time. Okay, so this is where I'm going to probably remember some of this stuff. So your reminding might help. So we've got Bell's Hells realized that with the Paragon's call, mercenaries dead, they have no one to question. So they put Ratanish's body in the portable hole, and then hopefully they can do a speak with dead later. And Joe informs that there's like a gathering crowd, and it's like there was a tinkering accident. So he's like, hey, that's what's going on there. And then comes back to the group. He's happy to see them. Introduces the Lagamore, which is Verna the Viper, a mastermind of the Overmind sect of Tinkerers who specializes in esoteric explosives. So we've got an explosives, a munitions expert, as it were. Joe explains that after the solstice, Rotanish grabbed them to make explosives, and also as a broomstone nullifier that Laudna destroyed with her fireball. So I guess the broomstone nullifier is something to stop the airships from flying,
Yeah.
basically, because the
Well,
broomstone is what's used for that, right?
yes.
Makes sense. Imogen loots Ratanish, taking his money, the nice battle axe and boots, and all the Dusk Maven's symbols. They leave the workshop, head to Hunder's safe house, and they're trying to avoid the is it Gajakondis crawler? I don't remember how to say that. I've heard it. Gajakondis? I'm going to say Gajakondis. Crawler gang on its way. So they're trying to stay safe, basically. The harness can be attached to a powerful magic source and channel the source of energy to the neck of the wearer. Normally, this would destroy the host, but the runic tuning of the harness is specific to the wearer. So keep that in mind. However, the three of them could repair it in about 2 weeks and possibly make some alterations. And they would need residuum and a workshop. Maybe Keyleth could take them to Whitestone and they could work with Percy. Joe has heard of the terrible tinkerer of Tal'Dorei, which I thought was awesome that they have Percy as the terrible tinkerer. All right, so before I get into my theory, go ahead and tell me what your thoughts on that section.
Well, pretty much the Paragon's call has become terrorists. They're blowing up the ships. They're trying to figure out ways to stop them from flying. Thankfully, when she threw in that fireball, when Laudna threw in the fireball, that destroyed the broomstone nullifier because it was in the middle of the room underneath her. But they had, Imahara Joe and Verna making all kinds of crazy explosives and were holding them hostage. And they had been held hostage for several weeks. Probably since the first thing even happened, probably since the first event in the solstice, they've kept them secluded. They haven't let them leave. They haven't let them do anything. So they didn't really know a lot of what had been transpiring outside because they weren't allowed to leave the building. It's really cool information that we got. We got to meet Verna. We found out she's a munitions expert, which is super cool. And then her class or her race, she's technically not from that realm or that plane of existence. She's more from the Fae. So that was cool because her and Fern had a couple of little exchanges back and forth, kind of acknowledging that. But gosh, then we got the information. They examined the harness and were able to tell us more about how it worked. Finding out that it has to be tuned specifically to the being that's trying to use it is very interesting. And then we also, I don't know if they said it in this section or if it's in the next section, but Matt made reference to the fact that Ludinus is probably 800 to 900 years old, and possibly from the Calamity, as old as the Calamity. So some of the stuff that we've said in the previous shows, where I've been like, I just think he's been around that long.
I do too.
He has, which is crazy.
So here's part of my theory, and this didn't open up until after the last few episodes. So here's what I'm thinking. I could be wrong, obviously, but I mean, it has been known to happen. I think that the big missing X factor is what is lewdness, and is it possible that he has the same type of thing going on that Ashton does, like with a bloodline that is like an ancient bloodline that's tied to some type of primordial thing, whereas Ashton is very much tied to the whole like the earth element. He's an earth genasi, right? So he's tied to that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But there's nothing saying that Ludinus couldn't be tied to some elder primordial titan type thing too, that merged with whatever was created. Like, because if it has to be some being that can take it, that like it's channeling the power in, there has to be something about him, or he's learned to tune it enough. Another thing that we've also said, I think you and I both talked about it, is that I think that because the way that the energy works, it's like it can be taken from this huge amount of like from a being or from a place or for some artifact,
an item
that's being channeled in. That person needs to be able to handle it, and there may be some ties when you use it on the natural world to extending your life to make him old as he is, similar to the way that the druids age, right? And we've talked about that before. And the other thing that we've talked about, and it reminded me of it, is what if it's a similar structure, a similar apparatus, and that's what Odahan's using. Hers are the vials on her backpack, right? And those are kind of coming in the same type of way. Maybe that his version is a greater version of what she has.
Or she has the updated version.
Could be. Maybe it's the updated version that you don't.
Because this one was an old harness.
Yeah. And they've like, well, why go to these other places when you can just take things like the Dunamancy stuff, boil it down, and residuum and all those other things.
Yeah.
And then, maybe she can only handle incremental things. Because the other piece of this is maybe not having Titanic blood, but maybe having like the power of Ruidus, being the Ruidus born, gives you the ability to do that, which means there's only a handful of people. There's 2 people in the group that could potentially use it.
But I mean, let's be real. It would be Imogen then, right?
Imogen
because
is
she is the stronger Ruidus born.
Yep. But
so
the backup plan
good
would be
theory,
fine, right? Like the 2, and also because she's of the Fae, like there are 2 viable options. Although I agree, I think Imogen is the better choice for what she's able to do.
Laudna was like, "Ooh, you could suck up Nana Mori," like, okay, that's getting a little macabre there. Like, we're not gonna go back to the Fae and suck up your grandma.
That's Laudna. So. I know.
But no, I think it's a great theory. Well, hopefully we'll get some more answers tonight. Yeah, tonight, right?
Yeah, tonight. Yep.
This week has been so long. I'm like, I don't even know what day it is.
I know. And we've had a shorter week with the holiday, and we still
a
long week. Okay. All minds burn. After a short rest, Imogen joins Ashton, and the 2 of them go off to find his old friend. So Pocket has gone underground, so they need to they head to the All Minds Burn to find Justy, and they meet Shady Sally, who is a member of the Nobodies, Ashton's old crew. It's tense. There's some blows, punched left and right. She catches his punch, but then he uses the ability that he has to kind of make her move in almost slow motion, and then sends her to the ground, and a little embarrassment on her side. And then Justy comes out and says, "Hey, follow me," and someone wants to meet you. And Ashton and Imogen head downstairs, and they walk through this very creepy and alien sort of area. There's this alien mind that's fractured, but it's also unified. But Matt makes a point to say that Imogen doesn't pick it up as being dangerous right now. There's a large mass of all this organic matter. There's skeletal remains of people who have rejoined and then died. It's really interesting. Imogen reaches out and then learns that the burn has lived many lifetimes, and it's not sure where it came from, but this is now its home, and it lives through the eyes of everybody that take from it. And what it turns out to be is what we find there is that the that drug that everybody that is smoking is really part of that being, like the dust or dried crumbling bits of this being, it seems like. But All Minds Burn wants to help and wants to see the moon, and it releases this little object. It's like about the size of an orange, but it's like this hard. It calls it a brood pit, and they want to have them take it to the moon and then leave it there. And if they do that, then All Minds Burn will be there for them when they need them. So there are a bunch of people who are already kind of in the mix, because everybody that has been involved with smoking this stuff, I guess, can be called upon when the time is right. So Imogen agrees to plant the brood pit on Ruidus. Justy claims that the All Minds Burn mean no harm, just lonely. So let's chat, shall we?
Yeah.
What do you think?
So Freaky, Ashton goes off and he takes Imogen with him to try to find Justy, and to see if he can gather up any of his old compatriots to help, bulk up their ranks, so to speak. Like, when the time comes, can we call on you to help, because this is the end of the world shit type stuff. And Justy was just like, wasn't really feeling it, but then he was like, come downstairs, I have something for you to meet or whatever. And oh my gosh, it just sounded disgusting. There's like mucus colored stuff everywhere, and the stairs are covered with this greenish pus. He said pus colored stuff. So I was already like, no, that's a gross. But when they get down there, there's just this mass of matter, organic matter, that's got all these skeletons in it and all this, funky stuff. And Imogen opens her mind willingly because she senses that it's not dangerous, and they have a conversation with impressed thoughts and pictures and things. And she really gets the feeling that it's lonely, kind of, because it's stuck down there. It can't go anywhere physically. The only thing it can do is ride along in the minds of everybody that's partaking in its body. I guess they smoke the stuff. They go through a whole ritual, I guess, because they had mentioned that in order to really have a deeper connection, because apparently they're all like hive mind. There's a buzzing in the back of their minds, and they all can link up. But in order to have a more permanent one, you have to go through a whole process, not just smoke the stuff. So
yeah, it's
a little crazy.
It's very reminiscent of I feel as if it's ancient stuff. I feel like it's reminiscent of like last season and the Nonagon and all of them kind of seeing through each other's eyes and stuff and things like that. But I also, it gave me the feeling, even before Baldur's Gate 3 release, it gave me the feeling that this season or this campaign was leaning more into the psionic and the sort of alien aspects of D&D, those pieces that are in there. So it kind of almost feels like a weird kind of version of a mind flayer, and the way that instead of having the slug in the brain, it's like it's the smoke that smoking the stuff that's like carrying it on and connecting everybody. Like there's lots of themes of like the otherworld or outsider type things that kind of come into play, and it is very much I think akin to what's happening with Ruidus in some ways, whereas Ruidus, it's sort of that difference between Ruidus feels like alien from the sense of like on another planet alien. This feels like alien from the sense of outside of our reality alien. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and the thing too is it doesn't remember where it came from, and it doesn't know how long it's been here. But whenever it accessed Imogen's thoughts on Ruidus, it had a longing and a familiarity with the dryness, the aridness of the land. So part of me almost wonders if it actually came from Ruidus, but it just doesn't have any recollection that that's where it was from. But there's this longing to now go there. So they get this like what's called a brood pit. It's this hard encapsulated like ball shaped thing that it kind of rolls out of its mass. And it's like, take it and leave it on the moon. Okay,
I
we'll
want
take it and
I
leave it
want
on
to
the
go to there.
moon. I want to go to there. Exactly.
Yep.
Let's do
I
it.
mean, it's I feel like it's aligning like thematically with what this whole campaign has been like. So I think it's good.
But
All
how
right,
they go
so
back and like explain they were like down there with this squishy thing, Ugh.
yeah. So they're like, so they head back to the others. Ashton actually tells Imogen that he's never felt more important, or never felt important before, but now it feels like, um, you know, it's a hit that someone else doesn't have to take. Meaning, like he wants to step in, and it's a good feeling for him. Like, and Imogen spent a long time feeling like she was taking up space meant for someone else, and Ashton took up space and he was ignored. And now they feel like things are coming together. Imogen tells Ashton that he's special. They say she's special too, and that's why they're fighting for her. And Ashton will get her to the moon. And beyond what that's also, she then replies to, "We're all going to go," is basically what she says in not so many words, but she says we're going to get there. They return Laudna's relief because she was convinced that Ashton had kidnapped Imogen. Belzel's stealth back to the original tree and find Keyleth. She met with Dawn Marshall, Cather Dro, a warrior of the Stormlord who was leading a battalion on the skyship that was attacked. And battlements are being set up around the Bloody Bridge to Ruidus. However, there's a sizable army of Raelora at the site. So no one is sure why this army, what the army, I can't even speak tonight. Hang on. Let me just try this. No one is sure what the army is capable of, and thus they are in a deadlock. Yeah, that worked. It's time for Keyleth to see some old friends and pull some out of retirement. They request that Keyleth take the Tinkerers back to Whitestone, and Keyleth agrees. She needs to just talk to Percy because that's going to be some convincing, and she promises that he's actually a sweetie when he opens up. And Belzel's are heading to the Shattered Teeth, specifically to the island of Saval, to meet with this is what's really funny, Jorana the Shore Shrew, and they all had a really great time trying to say Shore Shrew, and it kept going on for minutes and minutes, but it was fun. She's an older Galapa or tortoise folk, and the caretaker of the island. And Keyleth opens the tree up to Saval and then tells them to say hi to Torres for her. And she said, "Oh, I should have told you about Torres." And then, tree closes, and then that's kind of how it ends. So, final thoughts here. Percy is canonically known as the terrible tinkerer of Tal'Dorei. Taliesin is living his best life. That fight with the Peregrine's Call was gnarly. It would have been completely different if Ratanish was there properly, which was a clutch move by FCG to banish him, which was great. Speaking of RAP to General Ratanish, very scary enemy. And off to Shattered Teeth, an area of Exandria we've never explored. She's so excited, and no kidding, it is really, it's fun every time. I love it every time they go to a new place in Exandria and like explore stuff. It's pretty great.
Well, Travis's excitement is always so much fun too. Like he's always like, "Yes, we're opening up more of the map." And his thing is like he likes opening up the map, and then Laura's in the background going, "Loot the bodies, loot the bodies." This is a game.
Go to every place on the map.
Yes.
Loot the bodies.
Yes.
Push all the buttons.
Yes.
These are all things that they love to do.
Touch all the things.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
So I thought it was kind of funny that Laudna was really concerned, thinking that Ashton stole Imogen away, which is so stupid to me. Like, why do you really think he kidnapped her? Like, come on.
It was cute. It was funny. She was, I think that whole like, I'm not used to her going off on one-on-one with someone else was really what it was.
Right.
So it was really fun.
She's mine.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
But like you said before, I thought we learned a lot about Ashton. I think seeing like all of the stuff that went on, if he was hanging out with those people before and was, that was his former group, it just says a lot about like how he does things. I have, I've talked on here before. I love all the players definitely, and I love all the characters. But I've had my ups and down battle with Ashton sometimes of like his reactions to things or how he'll frame things. But the more I see it played out, and the more I find out about his backstory, the more it makes sense. I mean, I know Talison's an amazing player. He's doing it right. I'm
Yeah.
not questioning that, but it's like, ugh, sometimes, but the more I find out about it, the backstory, the more I kind of understand where he's coming from when he plays it out. So, yeah, I thought it's really well done. And I think
Oh,
too that like no, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
it's a callback to earlier in the episode, so you can
Yeah.
keep going if you want to do that
No, go
first.
ahead.
What you were saying? I was just gonna say, okay, so this stupid sword that Chetney has,
Yeah.
I don't like the fact that he's got this evil sword, but how cool is what it can do?
Oh yeah, right.
Oh my
Yeah.
god. Right?
Yeah, like
Like,
where it befriended the others, like
yes,
yeah, charmed
yes.
them. Yeah.
But that's the whole thing with the stupid sword. It's Chetney's friend too, like
Yep. It's very
uh-uh.
much like, it's trying to charm its way into Chetney's mind at the same time. When you do damage like that, and then you can also charm the person.
Yes. They're
Yeah,
your
I love it.
friend.
Yeah.
You just cut them and made them your friend.
It's my favorite. It's one of my favorite things about magic items in D&D or any fantasy game similar to this is that, like, yeah, Zach, uh, Travis and evil swords. Yeah, absolutely. But what I was gonna say is tied to this specifically. Like, one of my favorite things about it is that most of the time, or at least I think the best magic items are the ones that actually affect the player in some ways, right? Like it's one thing to play it out like story wise, but if you mechanically have this edge as a player, it's hard to give that up when
Oh, it would. If I got that little tag or the little ticket that he
Yeah,
gives out whenever you get an item and it said that's what it would do, I'd be like, oh.
right. That's what I'm saying, and that's why it's so
I'd be
perfect
like,
for a game like
so I'm gonna
this.
hold on to this for a little bit.
And so the players like, oh, like it, like, okay, like for example, if you had this thing and it didn't charm other people, but every time you hit there was a chance, if you roll D100, there's a 10% chance that every piece of treasure that this person has and where they hid it. Like those that really want the treasure, that's huge for them, even if the sword is corrupting and it's turning you and it's doing all these other things. Like
Yeah.
there's this balance. And so mechanically for him, he becomes like this badass on the field of being able to do all this stuff. But then not only is he that, but they're feeding into his ego by being charmed by him
Yes.
whenever he does the
Telling him
stuff. So it's like
amazing
this.
things. We're going to be great. We're going to be awesome. We're going to be
Yeah.
unstoppable.
So yeah, it's
Stroking
so
the
Travis and his
ego.
evil swords. This is what it does, right? Like, and it usually takes to the point where like you go to a certain cliff point with a decision,
Right.
and then you have to reel it back in.
Well, it's like whenever you're watching Vox Machina, the show
Yes,
itself, not watching this live stream where he stabs, where Grog stabs, hello,
Pike.
name's on Pike, and it's just like, oh, that's when you know, like,
Yeah,
oh, it's
it's like
really bad, it's
yeah,
gone too far,
that's
So
the
I feel
example.
like
Yeah,
what's gonna happen with this sword now,
I don't know, but it's gonna be so interesting. Keep watching, see how it goes. All right, let's. All right. Zach says, I just played a game where the DM made XP only obtainable through looting crystal shards off the bodies. Made the players do a lot of things differently mechanically. It was actually really fun. This is really great, and Zach, you might know this, but like in the early days of D&D, in the original D&D, and then I think even in first edition, you leveled up, XP equaled gold. So when you went into a dungeon or you looted stuff, you literally took the number of gold pieces, and that converted to XP.
I would win
there
that
was a
game.
reason. Yeah, so that was the reason. Like it was like, because it wasn't about what you could buy. That was part of it, but it was like, what can I do? And so a piece of art, a painting that was worth 10,000 gold pieces, was huge, because now you could go fence that, and then you get to cash in experience points. So and the group didn't level up at the same time. It wasn't like it is now most of the time, where everybody in the group levels up. Like you could have a 5th level character and a 7th level character in the same party. Everybody leveled up based on the experience that they got, instead of group XP. So there's a history of doing it that way. And I think the crystal shards is it's almost as if, like, when you are playing a video game and you kill somebody and it drops a ring, or it drops whatever, and you go pick it up. So it's really nice. And then and you're right, Shadow Dark does this now too. So if anybody's not familiar, I kickstarted it. Shadow Dark, Arcane Library, great stuff. It's sort of old school feel with some modern rules mixed in. She does an amazing job with this. So Shadow Dark is a really good example of like getting that whole XP equals gold thing back into it. And it's just different play styles. Not everybody likes it, but it's something that you can do. So
well, what would keep someone from killing you to take yours?
Nothing. That's why those games weren't always like that.
Mm-mm.
Like there were house rules at the table about what you could do, player versus player, all kinds of stuff. But you're talking about, like, when a lot of this was going on, it was not uncommon to show up to a table to play a game, and you had a folder with about 5 or 6 backup characters, because as soon as you died, you're like, okay, well, this is his cousin. This is Larry's cousin Barry. Like he shows up at the
Larry and Barry's
too.
cousin Gary.
And then his cousin, it was like over and over, because you were like, oh yeah, I'm gonna keep dying because this is such a deadly game. But that was like old school play, and I think that you can go too far with that, but we've learned a lot over the years. I think Shadow Dark is a good example of playing an old school feel with some modern things. Really good example. And we're going a little bit in the deep end here with other games, but another good thing I really like about Shadow Dark is that nobody, except I think almost nobody, has dark vision. It's very, very rare. So when you go venturing underneath, you're going to need a torch. And the way they handle it, if I remember right, and Zach, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they handle it with 1 torch equals 1 hour of gameplay, like literal at the table play. So when that torch runs out, you better have somebody that has another torch, or you're in the middle of a dungeon down underground, miles maybe, searching through a labyrinth with no light. Ooh. And so like it creates this whole, again, Shadow Dark feel. And you know, like the monsters can see you and you can't see them, kind of thing. And so this is like that old school thing. And so there's pieces of this that still can be, played within a 5e campaign. You can just one little element here and there. Matt Mercer does a great job of pulling some of this stuff in, especially with the way he handles resurrection. He makes it harder than what the 5e book says to do, right? So there's
should be. Yeah,
I think so too. And because, to be honest, 5e, it's kind of hard to kill people. We talked about this yesterday or something. Like it can be hard to kill people in 5e, like with players, because there's a lot of mechanics these days that keep the group up, and nobody wants to have a player or a character that dies. I'm not saying that it's not for good reason, but it is different than the days where you could now in 5e you literally can go to sleep for 8 hours, wake up, and you're back to full hit points and all your spells are back. That was not always the way. Like you had to go through healing, and sometimes you heal at a rate of 1 or 2 hit points a day or whatever it might be, because like it was just a different game. So there's a lot of cool things that you can pull in, and I love seeing in Critical Role where these elements kind of creep in here and there that are real old school. He's been playing as long as I have, or around the same amount of time. I know he started mainly with 2nd edition, but yeah, it's cool to see how that creeps over into the modern stuff. So
cool,
awesome. Well, we've got about 8 minutes away from It is
Were
Thursday,
they were they like, really quick? So Keyleth opened the door for them to get to the shattered teeth,
yeah, they're heading Shattered Teeth.
and then
She and
she's
the
taking
others went to
them
Whitestone
to Whitestone. So that's where we should be
and
picking
other
up
places too.
tonight.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha,
So
gotcha.
she's not just going to Whitestone. I think she had other things to do, but she was going to take them to Whitestone since they needed to go there. Let me just answer Zach's real quick. Piggyback on what Crystal said about Grog stabbing Pipe too. It's interesting that Chet has this mechanical implication because it seems like the characters aren't as close in this campaign.
Yeah.
I think that's probably true. I don't think that they have the bond that the other ones have. Although I will say that I feel like we see it come out more whenever there's problems. Like we saw it with Laudna when Laudna died, how much the lengths they went to try to get her back. We're seeing it more now with Ashton and like what he wants to do and how he's opening up to people. So I think you're absolutely right. I feel like it's hard comparing them in some light because this is definitely a group of misfit loners that kind of got together, right?
And they all could blow up the world individually, like it's crazy.
It's very crazy, but you're absolutely right. There's a lot to be said for that, like where it's going to be interesting to see how the dynamics change a little bit with them. But
and the sword's already trying to turn him against Keyleth, so like hardcore against Keyleth, which is crazy. So
yeah, it is. It's fun though. Like it's
fun.
So, all right, everybody. Have a great night. We will catch you back next week as we continue this. We did start, by the way. We started the chapter 2, episode 1 for Candela Obscura. We're almost finished watching that, and then we will do a review of that as soon as we can because really interesting new take on that. Not new take,
loving the new characters. Yeah,
I really love them too. So it's really well done. I highly recommend anybody that watches Critical Role, if you haven't checked out Candela Obscura. It's different, but it's a lot of fun, and it shakes things up a little bit from what you may normally
do. And just from what we've watched, I kind of feel like it might not be a bad idea to start with the second episode. The guy that's running it is one of the creators, and then all of the players that are playing, it's like they know their roles a little bit better, I think, than the very first round of group. They kind of broke everything in, so it was a little confusing at first, the very first one that happened, but honestly, it's such a cool story, a setting that it catches you anyways. But I do think like, the very first one was kind of a slog to get through and figure out what they were doing. So I feel like this next set started out like super cool and it caught me right away. So
it's a great point. Yeah. Like people knew what to expect kind of going in, but also you could start with either one and I don't think they spoil each other. Like,
no,
like I think you could watch them independently. So if you want to start with this one and then go back and watch the other,
right.
There are only 3 episodes. It's not like having to watch, 6. We're on episode 70 for this one. So there's 3 episodes in a chapter. So you could start with this one and then go back and watch the other one if you're interested. So I think it's fun. It's a cool vibe to it. So.
I think I also just love Brandon Lee Mulligan. I everything I watch him in, I'm like, he's so cool.
Yeah. He's just one of my favorites. One of the funniest people ever. So, but just super talented. So
yes.
All right, everybody, have a amazing night. We will catch you next time.
It's Thursday.
It's Thursday.
Yes.
Take care.
Bye.
Everybody.